Doing all right. We're doing all right. We're gonna go over the white paper. Well, not even the white paper, just the roadmap real quick. This guy right here. All right. Super quick. Super quick. So let me see this. All right. Hoping you had to read through it beforehand. So here's the deal. I'm gonna go put together a new chain. I already put together some tests about a few weeks back. I had to scrap all of it just to make space and put together some other servers, but a few weeks back, give it a shot, and it looks promising. It definitely looks promising. Now the thing is, I'm not gonna like read this verbatim, but the general idea is, all of these layer one blockchains, their value, it comes from what's on this blockchain. Maybe back in 2017, you could have an ICO, or like even earlier, you could have an ICO for a chain, and just the promise of the chain, the chain was the product back in those times. But nowadays, I think interests have matured a bit, and I think the expectations are a bit higher. And a chain is effectively, it's just a payment portal. No one cares about like the release of PayPal or Stripe. You know what I mean? That's not much of a feature. People only use those applications, if you will, or those payment portals to get what they actually want, the products, right? And so this kind of I'm seeing. Oh, what's up, Ollie? How you doing, man? How you doing, man? How's it going, Monk? How you guys doing? So yeah, the thing is, it's like, we've got layer one blockchains that, like, if there isn't a fundamental product, like their value comes from the product. So it creates this conflict of interest in a way. It kind of creates like a paradox, which is like, well, if someone's going to create a revolutionary product, well, why should it be on someone else's chain? That should just be a part of it. Like, that should just be another aspect of like the scope of your project, right? Like, granted, if it's like a 10K PFP, yeah, like it's yeah, maybe that is much better to have it on a layer one blockchain. If the scope of your project is a bit more narrow, or it's more so focused on trading, right? Absolutely fine. And there's nothing wrong with having these kind of things on layer one blockchains. But if the scope of your project is, you want to do a lot, you want to build a very big thing, and you want to have the control to fine tune things to make it like as seamless as possible, as effective as possible, your best bet is to just have your own chain. And I think that this is a framework that, well, not many companies, not many products, not many projects are actively exploring this, just because the burden of knowledge is huge, right? There's a lot that goes into it, and then all of a sudden the scope of what you're doing becomes massive, if not almost impossible, right? That being said, though, I think that will change. Monk, you're saying you just start the day listening in while doing some Angular. Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. So yeah, so I think in the future what we're gonna see is, because it's like, well, I can I remember Weekend back in the day, for their art planet, for the alchemy portion of the game, they wanted to cover the CPU expenses for users, and they staked 4 million wax. Now at the time, it was worth a tremendous amount, And this is, I'm not throwing, not speaking ill on a Weekend whatsoever. Just as like that is objectively what happened. They staked a whole bunch of wax for their users, and I'm thinking, it's like, well, at the time, I think it was worth millions of dollars, And it's like, well, if you have your own Antelope like side chain, it's like, I don't even like the term side chain, because that it's not even really what it is anymore. But if they had their own chain with this prospect that I've got outlined here for Twig, with like an 8 GB state limit, it's like we're talking about maybe $50 to $100 per like complete infrastructure setup, right? Because the main limitation that comes from like hosting Antelope chains is the RAM sizes, right? You need all of your Node.js clients to have that like the space to get up to there. Now you have stuff like mapped private, which is a setting that you put in Node.js that makes it so that when you're actually hosting a node, it will actually cache some of the unused data out of the RAM, out of the memory, right? And it'll just bring it back in when it needs to use it. But the thing is, you still need a considerable amount. Now on wax, we have around, I think it's around 95 gigabytes, somewhere around there, of on-chain state. And so you need 128 gig server, right? That's a huge, that's a huge barrier. That's a massive barrier, especially when you think about like a complete infrastructure setup, including redundancies, including RPC nodes or chain API so that users can access as the endpoint and push transactions to. You need ship nodes to feed into your Hyperions and to feed into atomic assets, which also need their own, considerable amount of RAM. I think atomic assets probably needs like 64 gigs of RAM. And again, redundancies all across here too, right? You have your block producers; those need to have, right. You gotta get two of those, and you got sentry nodes in the midst of this. You got seed nodes in the midst of this. All of a sudden, you're looking at like you need 10 different servers, each with like 120 gigs of RAM, just to have a complete, like very very like solid 99.999% uptime. Realistically, a little bit less. You can have some off days, but very high consistent. Very very excellent setup. That's a lot of money. That ends up being a ton of money, right? When in practice, it's like, well, let's take a look at what this, of these 95 gigabytes that are on the Wax mainnet, around 11 gigabytes of that is just Alien World shovels and Farmers World coins. You know what I mean? And I think that's just diabolical, honestly. I think that the fact that like all of the nodes, you gotta keep in mind, there's probably somewhere around 300, like I want to say between 200 to 400, maybe pushing even 700 total Nodios clients that are serving the Wax chain. The burden that those like the 11 gigs of Alien World shovels and for 80 and like Farmers World coins, those NFTs put is like I estimated it came down to about $50,000 in pure infra costs per year, and that's baffling, right? That's baffling. Like that is digital garbage. It's not serving anyone. Farmers World isn't even a game anymore, and that's 80 million Farmers World tokens. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. And it kind of highlights this issue of like, well, Antelope and this idea of being like providing a chain for everyone to come and build. You can deploy whatever smart contract as long as you're paying like the resource model. It's like, well, you're taxing on this massive, there's just like a massive expense that's being paid here for things that maybe aren't in the best interest of the chain. They're not even in the interest of really any real users either. It just doesn't make sense. It really just doesn't make sense. Like if I look at we look at terraformers, it's like there's maybe around like 50,000 NFTs right now that can easily fit within an 8 gigabyte state limit, right? And so the prospect here is like, well, you have your costs reduced from like maybe $1,000 to $2,000 a month to all of a sudden maybe $50 to $100 a month, right? Much more affordable. And then when it comes to, well, trying to get guilds to help produce the blocks on Twig, it's gonna be like, well, they don't need to be compensated as like the same way that Wax is like actively right now paying out effectively like 12 and a half grand USD to every single top 21 producer, and it goes down to about like 6K for the standbys, right, on the low end. So it's like the expenses are way lower, the expectations are way simpler, and it's just this entire idea of having mini chains, right? You have a big project, you're gonna do a whole bunch of stuff on it. All right, just get a mini chain, very affordable. It becomes the back end for your entire game. Anything that can be owned can be a tradable asset, and it'll be just like that. I think it really is a model that, well, again, no one else is pursuing it, and it's so affordable. Like, I mean, you want like a minimum wage employee, you're looking at around like $3,000 a month here in Canada, right? Just to get 160 hours of work, like it's about $3,000 a month. You can't beat this sort of like the effectiveness of this cost, And once you have it up and running, well, there's no need to have competition between the guilds that are like producing or providing like endpoints, right? Let's just pool it together. Let's just load balance all of it together. Let's just cheap, affordable, deliver a quality experience for the users, and call it a day. No need to have like back and forth conversations about like, oh well, let's try to get the most value out of like like like, oh, someone else has to come up with a product and talk about, like, Hyperions for months on end, right? It's going to be a dedicated chain. All the smart contracts are going to be privatized, meaning that only certain accounts will be able to deploy them, and everything's going to be designed in a way so that it's just simply not going to result in, well, massive expenditures of RAM, massive, like, inline bombing of transactions, right? We got like some actions on the mainnet on Wax. They're like pushing hundreds and thousands of inline actions, just devouring Hyperion. It's almost like 50 terabytes or something. Like, that's, these are pretty tough problems, and they can just all be avoided if the DApp developers, the Web3 project developers, had to also put together their own chain. You know what I mean? Including all, you're asking, how many active producer nodes will Twig have? It's a good question. It's a good question. I don't fully know, right? Yeah, it could have 21. It could have less than that. The thing is, I don't see, because it's going to be for one project, right? Now, I might have multiple games on this chain. This might be a framework that might be replicated elsewhere as well. But ultimately, like, this is for one project. So how many transactions is there really going to be? I don't think we'll need, realistically, more than a few producers, at least at the start. And I still don't know the exact, like, I haven't put together all of the math, like to give like a concrete formula as to how the compensation is going to be distributed, right? And what producers can expect. But I want it to be something that's like, well, to participate, it's going to be like very, very cheap. Odds are almost all of the guilds, like, these requirements are less than hosting on the testnet on Wax, right? Almost all of the guilds, I'm sure, have a server running around. It's like, yeah, like, if you want to participate, sure, would love to have you. I don't want it to be a thing where, because it's like, this part of it doesn't even matter. You know what I mean? This part of it doesn't even matter to users at all. What they care about is like, well, is the game any good? Is the product any good? That's what they're actually engaging in. Great to have you here, by the way. All right, so a couple other things. So 1 second block time, right? Because if you have, normally with like the half-second block time, you've got about 200 milliseconds of computation, and that's 300 milliseconds. Yeah, you can push it up a little bit, but you run into this issue where, like, a lot of the time just gets lost because of networking, right? And having it around 1 second, well, you can just cut back on that networking, right? You just get pretty much double the computational load per second, which is fantastic, and it's going to make it very scalable. Even if there's, like, I don't know, like 10,000 players actively at any given point in time, I think it should be able to actually handle that amount of loot generation, if you will. No, you're asking, Antelope can run with a single node, in which case you can fake instant finality without Spring. Indeed. Yeah, I pieced that together when I did my test launch a while back, but and I will say, I'd love to use Spring, but I still have to submit the request to meet with the ENF and just figure out the process for that. It looks like it can be done, if I like, because it's like there's no market cap for this. It's not even created yet, right? So it looks like it can be done, and it would be interesting to get it with Spring, but I think it is going to. I mean, we'll see, one step at a time. Instant finality is very cool, though. What else do we have? We have the optimized compiler. So this is something that already exists, right? This is something that simply already exists, but the problem is that, well, apparently, I don't know what kind of actions are actually there, or what kind of smart contracts can be made to actually that result in an exploitable situation when optimized, like when OC is enabled on producers. But that does seem to be the case. So this is just a setting for the people that don't know. Your block producer nodes, they have a setting called EOS VM OC, and so what it does is whenever it interacts with the smart contract, it's just going to compile it into the native binaries that can run, so it doesn't need to be in the EOS VM. And so this means that it gets a massive performance increase, because right now, anytime, if this is off, anytime a smart contract action is executed, the producer has to compile the entire smart contract, and then it does the action. You know what I mean? And if it's doing multiple actions, well, it keeps that within the same transaction life cycle. But this still, it becomes a huge issue, especially if you have something like, I don't know, like a massive smart contract that might be over half a like about half a megabyte. It's just it's a large amount that needs to be compiled, and it seems like, well, this is a pretty simple, pretty straightforward way because to get extra performance, because again, all of the contracts are owned by, in fact, like deployed by me on the chain, and so it's not, there isn't going to be any obstacles or dangers when it comes to having OC enabled. Didn't know that. Like runtime compiling. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so you can imagine, like, if you have like like the case of, like, remember, like those arbitrage bots that like do, or like any kind of smart contract that's like transferring tokens from multiple different token contracts. It all of a sudden becomes like it's just constantly compiling smart contracts to push like one action. You know what I mean? So it's like this as a whole. I feel like is an area that could be massively optimized, but also the thing is, it's almost like a bit of a conflict of interest, because if your blockchain, the way it generates income is by billing users for computation, well, making it more performative means that you're programming something to make yourself less money. That's effectively what you're doing, right? That's the net outcome of it. And so that's why I think there's definitely, like, just because right now especially, we don't even have the use cases that really need this magnitude of computational power, you know. But anyways, I digress. So I'm gonna have no CPU or net fees for users. This just isn't even gonna be an issue, right? This isn't even gonna be an issue. There will be. I am considering, like, things, um, sort of like limitations as to how many transactions a user can push in a minute and that sort of thing, right? Because if there is no CPU or net fees, yes, someone could try and put up a botnet just for the sake of putting together a botnet and trying to, like, take down the chain. And if there's no resource cost, they can just infinitely transfer NFTs back and forth. Like, let's say transferring like millions of NFTs back and forth, right? Like, so I am gonna have to figure out some sort of outside constraints that will never be triggered by a real user, but will catch the sort of botting behavior. And of course, we have these space-time resource models. So this, I feel very confident in this model, right? Instant finality with no cost could be fun. Oh, it's gonna be a good time. I promise. It's gonna be a good time. So space-time. The idea here is that you are renting out a portion of space for a period of time. You don't have to worry about RAM. You don't have to worry about the bytes anymore. That will be worried for, by me. I'll take care of that side of things, right? I'll deal with that side of things. All you have to worry about is every 24 hours, it's gonna be like, let's say let's have a look here. We hop over to explorations, manage loadout. You're gonna have a stash, right? You're gonna have a stash the same way that you do here in Terraformers. That's just how all of your NFTs are gonna be. And every 24 hours, for having any NFT in a particular stash, you're just gonna get billed for it. That's it, right? The idea is that every hour that you're playing, you're gonna find hundreds, if not thousands, of NFTs. You have to decide if it's a good NFT or a bad NFT. We're gonna have loot filters. We're gonna have loot pinatas. All right. You have to decide, right? So if you want to pick up all the common NFTs, and then you have 20,000 NFTs that are absolutely worthless, they're not, you can't even use them. They're not even for anyone. But that's just because you were a loot goblin. That's on you, right? You have to worry about that, right? And like, if you want some, like, rough numbers of how I'm aiming to balance it, I'm aiming for somewhere around. So if you played the game for 1 hour, and this is like, you're just starting out, right? So you're just like a complete noob. You play it for 1 hour. I want you to be able to get enough tokens to cover the space-time cost for 10 NFTs for a month. All right, that's kind of the scope. And then, of course, well, as you get better in the game, as you make progress, you move forward, you're going to be able to generate more tokens, right? Eventually, I want you to be able to reach somewhere around 60 NFTs per month, right? The storage of them for 1 hour of gameplay, right? And that becomes kind of the cycle here, right? Where you are incentivized to keep playing, because if you don't, then you won't be able to cover the expenses on your rental of storage, right? We're no longer gonna have like millions and millions of like common NFTs that are just gonna sit there indefinitely, right? If you do not, if you cannot cover the space-time costs, one of two things is gonna happen. Um, Option A is that it's just going to get burnt, right? The higher the asset ID number, it's going to burn it based off of that until you can cover the expenses. Or B, it's just going to auction off, again, the highest asset ID assets that you have, and whatever proceeds are made from that are going to go and try to cover the rest of your space time expenses. The point is, though, you have to be mindful of it, right? Now, you might be thinking that that might be a bit tough and you don't want to be glued to your chair until the end of time, right? And keep playing the game, right? And don't worry, I totally get that. This isn't meant to be something that's gonna be like extremely daunting or punitive. It's meant to be something that just curbs, the tail end of what happens when people hoard NFTs, right? And of course, like all of your atomic asset NFTs with terraformers right now on the Wax mainnet, they are not going to be, they are not part of the space-time model. They're going to exist a little bit outside of it, if that makes sense, right? So you don't have to worry about those ever being burned. Those are going to persist, right, in their own kind of thing. And the way I want you to look at it is that space-time and this whole resource model is for ephemeral NFTs. It is for the game, all the NFTs that you're finding on the ground and stuff. Anything that gets put into atomic assets, it's going to be more permanent. It's going to persist for a longer period of time, right? And that's sort of because I want there to be like a seasonal, cyclical nature to the game, right? And as you play, you're going to find NFTs. NFTs get better and better. And you don't have to worry about because the thing is, I don't want to be in a position where I'm selling you NFTs or tokens at all. At all. I'm selling you storage space for your assets, right? That way I can always provide the storage space. You decide what you want to put in it, but I think that becomes a fair trade offer, And of course, we got the 8 gigabyte lightweight state limit. Already talked about that. It's going to be pretty straightforward, and this is going to house a ton of NFTs, right? This is so many NFTs that it's insane. Right, like this is more than enough. And of course, if you're wondering, TWIG stands for the world is game. Indeed. All right, so we're gonna have the white paper and the testnet deployment. Put it together next week. I'm probably gonna actually put together the testnet and have it up and running by tomorrow. And of course, the white paper, you're gonna have to document a couple things, set some expectations, and put together some formulas for the tokenomics. I feel quite confident that most of the work that I've done in Terraformers already can just be ported over seamlessly. And I will say, almost all sources of passive token production are likely to be reworked in a way that they're not going to produce tokens passively anymore. I fear that it creates a difficult ecosystem to balance, because it's just like this you're able to compound it so much faster, right? And so in case you're wondering, right, so something like lands, right, how lands are going to work is they're going to give you permanent space or permanent space-time space, right? You're able to, your assets become like the storage unit. Your lands become the storage unit. And so you can look at it as like, well, your lands are technically generating space-time and it's being eaten up at the exact same time by the space-time model. But generally speaking, it's like, I want assets to not have their value tied to just emission, because anything that's emissive results in a scenario where, well, the value keeps disintegrating away. You know what I mean? The value, if it doesn't have a token emission and doesn't just like wither away, the value remains in the asset. And also it simplifies things a ton, not only for like legal matters, because things all of a sudden start looking very security-esque, but also for like, well, What is, like, preventing runaway compounding inflation, right? And power creep in the power pools. All right, redeployment of all the game contracts on Twig. So this part of it, this part of it, it's very easy to do. It's very straightforward, and we could have technically like terraformers be like as it currently is, fully playable on Twig by the end of next week, no problem. The thing is though, I want to push it forward and beyond what terraformers just currently is, because right now, yeah, we got the crafting, we can find items and whatnot, we go out, we explore, but it's still a fully on-chain game. Now there is a benefit to that, being that, well, if it's a fully on-chain game and I set the game up to be fully decentralized, meaning that at some point in time we can lock the contracts, we can lock everything, then yeah, the game could live on forever. It could, perhaps. But the reality is that, you need to actively develop games. There is no game other than, I don't know, chess that it's able to exist in its initial state indefinitely, and players love to interact with it. You have to constantly iterate and improve it. Like every single Web3 game needs to be a live service, which means by definition, it's not even possible for it to be truly decentralized. And I know the decentralization maxis might not appreciate that, but end of the day, it's like there is no way to overcome that obstacle, which is that yeah, there's no other way to say it. Like, it's just not possible to truly decentralize really any Web3 project that's actively being developed and maintained, you know. So I want to get the contracts and whatnot, and actually set it up in a way so that the smart contracts, all that they're doing is it's just a generate loot button, effectively, right? You're gonna have a live game server. You're gonna be playing. You're gonna have a good time, exploring space, killing monsters, having a good time. And anytime loot drops, it just gets pushed from the game server into Nodios, which pushes it onto the chain, and that is going to generate your loot. And then you're going to sift through it, decide what you want to keep, what you don't want to keep, and you're going to keep on going. Now we have the Mutant Assets NFT standard. Now this is already up and running, right? Let's have a quick look here. We can see, yeah, it's been up for 9 months. I think the first iteration of this was under here, yeah, almost 2 years ago. Like this, it's working quite nicely. It's working quite nicely, and I think it's about time to put together like the final iteration, like the final upgrade for this. And I found a couple things that I can do with it to actually push the performance a bit higher, and finally put together the API for this. And with the API, well, it's going to drop the RAM costs even more, because right now these assets, the owner field is a UINT 128T, which is a composite index of the asset ID and the owner, and so that is a secondary key, right? The primary key is actually I'm not sure if I have it. Yeah, I don't think this is it's not here in the upgraded version. I wonder if I can, let me see if I can fetch it for y'all real quick. Grab this. Just a second. All right, looks like, yeah, I can't find it. It's somewhere in the files. It's somewhere in the files. Yo, Black Fang, how's it going, man? How you doing, bud? How you doing? Yeah, just going over the roadmap, going over some of the things that are going to be happening over the next quarter for Terraformers as I'm moving the project to its own dedicated chain. But yeah, gonna have the API, put together the marketplace. And what I really want, same with the decks for it. Like these, especially like a marketplace contract or a dex, it's actually very easy to put these contracts together. It's a UI. It's a UI, right? And I think you guys already know this. UI is not my forte. I mean, I do my best. I really do. But I mean, you have so many screen sizes. You got people on like 240 pixel Huobi's smartphones. UI is not my forte, but yeah, I'll do my best and try to make it all fit together. I haven't seen you stream in a while. Glad to see you. Yeah, it's been a minute. It has been a minute indeed. I've decided to lock in. Gotta lock in here for a little bit. Put together some work. And then of course, step 5, we're gonna have the account creation and alpha gameplay. So this is, we're gonna have, and keep in mind, it's all gonna be in your browser, right? All gonna be in your browser, and I do want to have some form of email login so that you can just play the game without really having to worry about any of the crypto side of things until you want to actually do something with the crypto side of things. If you want to just play the game and just like see what happens, I want that to be very accessible and literally free. And of course, the core protocol development and further customization. Because I mean, the end goal for Twig, I guess Twig is the chain. That's just what I'm calling it. But like it's essentially just like another kind of antelope protocol, right? And the end game for this is to have the framework set up in a way that anyone or any team, any studio that's building a game with significant amount of digital items on it, to have a reasonable, cost-effective option for for putting their assets on the blockchain. Right now, if you want to deploy, you want to put those assets on any existing chain, it might cost you a ton of money. Right, you want to put on ETH, good luck. You could put on Polygon, you could put on Sol, you could put on Wax even, right? But there's definitely a significant cost there, and it's you could just have your own chain, and if you have the framework for it, again, $50 to $100 a month. My mid journey fees are more expensive, right? I pay $100 Canadian a month on freaking mid journey, right? So it's ridiculous how cost effective this is, and I think customizing it, getting it to the point where all of the features for complex loop generation and complex asset generation just become a part of the consensus itself, just like a massive library that people can just interact with and build digital assets unlike anything people have ever seen before, right? And I hate the idea that an NFT is just a picture, because it can be so much more. It's just not executed properly. Well, it's just not executed with that goal in sight, right? NFTs can be all kinds of things, right? But it's, the upper limit is very high and quite frankly untapped. Monkey's saying just slap Magic the Gathering on chain. Dude, that would be legendary. That'd be legendary. And even Magic the Gathering, or even in any action RPG or MMORPG, these are things that just don't really exist in Web3. They do, but they're just not executed on the same, tier or same caliber as things such as World of Warcraft or Path of Exile or Diablo or Borderlands or Torchlight, or there are so many products, so many games out there that are it's difficult enough to nail everything right in terms of product development, and then weaving in the whole blockchain side of things. This is a massive leap, right? And you gotta keep in mind, there are billion-dollar teams. There are teams with hundreds of team members on them, and they can't deliver it. They keep dropping the bag. They keep dropping the ball. They're fumbling it, right? And I think the reason is because it's just the scope is so wide, then some of these pieces aren't very self-evident just yet. You're saying a picture is just one representation of data? Absolutely, it's a single field within the JSON, right? At least on a 721. Even on even on atomic assets, it's technically a single field, right? It's just the IPFS hash, right? Just one part of it. Looking ahead, what happens to my assets? So yeah, of course, all of your NFTs that you've got. Don't worry, I'm not. Hey, no, I'll say this right now. I have zero interest in having any sort of ICO or new NFT drop that you have to participate in and give me more shekels. Like, as far as all the Terraformers members, all you guys are concerned, it's already paid for. All right, gonna deliver it, interact with it. We'll see how it is, and we'll see what happens next, right? But again, I wanted to keep the scope of everything here just to the second quarter, because, well, we'll have to see what happens, right? This is a massive prospect. This is like, to say this is ambitious is like an understatement. And like, it's not like I'm I have like decades of programming experience under my belt. It's not like I have like a formal education in any of this stuff, right? I'm like pretty much entirely self-taught. Now, I've had great mentorship from lots of very talented developers to help me get there, or to get here, right? But it's like, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be pretty tough. Monk, you're saying it needs to be game first and then use blockchain behind, where the user won't even notice it on chain, and then it has a chance to gather the masses. Absolutely, I 100% agree. 100% agree. And the thing is, it's like, if it's a game that is only able to be marketed towards the crypto native crowd, you fundamentally have a product that will die whenever Bitcoin is out of fashion, right? Or just like whenever it's on like a down period, right? Because it's that just means that like you don't have a regular stream of income unless everything unless there's so much money being pumped through the entire like ecosystem, the entire space, that eventually some of it just pours into your bucket. You know what I mean? You have to be like any Web3 product, any Web3 game, honestly, like it has to be able to actually break out of like just like the box that it's in, which is an actual like actually get into the mainstream audience, and have people who are willing to regularly enjoy and play the game, and actually play it because, well, they think it's fun, they're actually having a good time. And then, well, the lows won't be as low because you're gonna have a stream of income, and like support in the community and stuff when Bitcoin isn't booming, right? You're saying, yeah, I mean, we're casually speaking of creating our own chain here. That's actually the easier part. The chain itself is actually very straightforward. It's all of the, let's say, yeah, like deploying, just like starting the chain and getting going is no problem. It's all of the, well, setting up a nice proper infrastructure setup and getting the support of guild and all of like there's a lot of very experienced people in this space, and trying to get people on board and being like, all right, let's, like, I don't know how much I can pay y'all, right? I don't have much money, I'll tell you that much. But I mean, the expenses, the ask, I'm keeping it extremely modest, extremely slim. And then, yeah, all of the game side of things, I'd say, are way harder. Crypto crowd is cyclical, and most of the extraction mindset, which will then eat away other people's enjoyment. Well, chain plus all the info around that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I don't think the crypto crowd is cyclical, but I think the idea of an extraction mindset, I don't think that's necessarily like the fair, um, like, I don't think that's the right analysis. I mean, it is an analysis. I think that there's definitely merit to it. But like another way to look at this is that, like, well, for any game that has a virtual economy, people will sell the like the fungible token equivalent of it, or the NFT equivalent of it on secondary marketplaces that might even be against the terms of service. This might not even be a crypto game, right? We see that in Path of Exile. Even in Path of Exile 2, people are like selling divine orbs, and you got like all the bots that are like spamming you and stuff, right? So it's like, it's not so much that like any crowd like has like has like an extraction mindset, and that's the problem here, right? It's more so that, like, well, if there's like, your time has value, you know what I mean? And if your time is able to generate these tokens, what people do with that next, it's entirely up to them. It's just like, if you have a job and you get paid, right? It's entirely up to you what you want to do with that money. And I don't think there's anything wrong with like selling tokens, or to do whatever you want to do with it, right? But granted, if like with me being in a leadership position, effectively, right, and dictating like what the tokenomics are and all this stuff, like that's a bit different for me, right? Because like if I have an extraction mindset, the chain dies. You know what I mean? Like the chain dies. It's not gonna stand. And so having very clear set boundaries for for me as well as like the producers and whatnot, and how that kind of the sell off is gonna happen, so that this can be a profitable company or a business endeavor, is pretty important. And then I mean like whatever people want to do with their tokens, it's up to them, right? It's up to them. The way I look at it, it's like if the game is enjoyable, people will stick around and they will buy stuff. Like it's just that simple. But the main like that's like the last thing that needs to really be worried about, because I'm quite confident in this business model actually being successful. It's it's like all the focus needs to be on making sure the game is actually enjoyable. This is the thing that layer one blockchains are paying so much money for, doing everything that they can to try to onboard a studio. Please build a legendary game. Please devote like 3 to 7 years of time and millions of dollars in development to build a game. To do it all so that it's an enjoyable product that actually has replayability and is worth playing, right? Because when you actually try to compete with all that is out there, you're not competing with just like other games on Wax or other projects on Antelope or even other projects in the entirety of the Web3 space. You're competing with all the projects in the Web2 space. You're competing with every single form of entertainment and things that can consume disposable income in the real world, right? People can just doom scroll on Instagram. People can just go on TikTok, watch YouTube Shorts. They can just watch YouTube, or they can watch Twitch streams, right? There are so many ways that people can spend their time, and you have to really create a compelling product so that you can fight for your slice of the internet attention market. It's not easy, but it's like that is the number one thing, right? So if the product's good, if the product's excellent, then there will be funds, and yeah, yeah, it'll be alright. I'm kind of rambling on here. It is like 1 a.m. for me. Monkey say, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong, but I mean, crypto games usually die or retention gets bad. When bots have entered and swoop into liquidity, then only the core players stay. I agree. I agree. The thing is though, a lot of crypto games, it's not necessarily like their fault that they die off for the most case, right? So some projects, I want to say like maybe around like 10% of projects were actually a scam right from the get-go. The other 90% are just like it's just a natural cause and effect of like being a small business, right? Like it's not guaranteed. It's extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult, and sometimes it's like it's your well. I mean, this is a niche that is relatively brand new as far as like businesses go, and it's one that is like extremely dependent upon various fields, like very complex fields, but in particular like it's very dependent on math. It's very dependent on like economics. It's very dependent on understanding like human behavior and game theory, and how like when you have several like a large group of people, what are the kind of outcomes that sort of happen. It's an extremely complex like thing, like, and if you want like a really easy simple example of it, it's like look at the governments of every country and how they're running things, right? They're just doing this on a larger scale. Even they can't nail it, right? No one can nail it. It's extremely difficult to anticipate what's going to happen when you have let's say a token or assets and you want to preserve its value. Well, let's say you have a country and you want it to continue to prosper and grow. So it's like the scope of it is so massive. It's like infinitely harder than any other small business that someone can get up and running. Yeah, many times it's actually tokenomics. Yeah, a good portion of times it's tokenomics. A good portion of the time, it's actually, uh, it's not just tokenomics. They're just hidden variables. There's things that it's not immediately obvious that it's happening, and that it's right in front of you, but you just don't even know it, right? Um, and a lot of times it's like, the only proven model that we've seen so far is a drop. a drop happens for like a promising NFT project, people participate, raises a whole bunch of money, and then, well, it struggles to retain the interest, it struggles to create a sustainable income out of it, right? We're having the big bangs, right? We're not having the universe creations. That's kind of like where it's kind of falling apart. And again, I don't think that's, like whatever people want to like think about it, because maybe they lost money, they're jaded. I actually don't think it's like most Web3 projects' faults that they haven't like figured out the formula, because it's like that formula doesn't even exist yet. It's not even proven yet. And these are things I feel like I've said this like many times before, and but it's still worth saying, and being mindful of like, yeah, like that project that you might see that might like have raised like $100 million, it's very possible that it can collapse, very possible, and the odds are it's probably not even their fault. Like, you do one tiny exploit, one tiny bug, all of a sudden, boom, you have one bad PR release, boom, like liquidity exits so quickly, right? And so, anyways, like the point I'm trying to make is that it's a very, very difficult niche, very complex, and it's very, very punishing. And I think that's also fueling, it's keeping a lot of developers away from it, keeping a lot of companies away from it. And I don't think it's honestly like most projects' fault, when stuff like that happens. It's Yeah, let's say like people are battle testing it live all the time. Indeed, absolutely. That's pretty much it. People are pretty much battle testing it live. That's just how it is. There is no other way. There is no other way. Yeah, yeah. I feel good though. I feel really good about this the whole space-time model thing. And I mean, it's like, well, the bottom point is that, well, the cost of operating this is so affordable. It's kind of whatever. It's not like there's this massive expense that's coming through, like every week or every month. That's just like, well, you have to generate profit. It could absolutely be a sleeper. It's quite likely that maybe like not a whole lot will happen when Terraformers migrates over to Twig, but it's also quite likely that, like, well, it's going to open up new avenues and new possibilities. It's going to be a lot easier to get listed on exchanges, for example, if it's like, yeah, we have a whole blockchain, here's a whole game, it's a put together a blockchain just for the game, right? Not a lot of games are doing that, not a lot of projects are doing that, right? So I think getting the word out there is going to be a lot easier. Looks promising. Feels good. Feels good. All right. Well, that's about all I've got for today. Thank you all for being here and yeah, keeping me company. Um, yeah, we have a game that uses only the native token of this chain. Exactly. Exactly. It's fueled by it. The native token of the chain. It's literally for the game. It's for the chain. Right. Like it's a very very nice. We'll see how it pans out. We'll see how it pans out. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to ask them. If not, gonna wrap up this stream, and I will well, hopefully we won't have a next stream on like next week, Friday probably. Hopefully it won't be a night like vampire hours, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I'll try to figure out a good time for everyone and a good time for myself as well. Um, yeah, if we're all just chilling here, not much is happening. I'm not gonna say sounds good. Have fun, man. We'll do, and hang in there. Be patient. Ollie, you're saying nice stream. Thanks, Dean. Have a good night. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. All right, looks like that'll be it. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate it, and I'll catch y'all later.